I really believe that this is part of the liquid lie because we ignore how dangerous this is. The consequences of blacking out, of losing control, of being completely and utterly vulnerable, right, are brushed under the carpet. The fact of millions of people regularly drink themselves into a state where they have no memory of what happened the night before. This should be seen as an emergency, a real issue, a real problem, but instead, it's a bit of a joke. It's a badge of honor. It's just part of what a great night out we had. It must have been a great night out because I can't remember it.
Welcome to the 1000 Days Sober podcast. My name is Lee Davey. I am not an alcoholic. I refuse to be anonymous. I am someone who lives a self-led life, alcohol-free as fuck. And I spend every waking moment of that life helping other people do the same, like right now. Welcome to the 1000 Days Sober Dailies, a daily dose of dulcet tones from yours truly, designed to educate you on the wheres and wherewithals of the liquid lie, of alcohol reliance, of why you are stuck, of the strive method, and hopefully, because of you listening to this today, you will choose not to drink alcohol for one day only, which is our goal ultimately. Okay, today we're going to talk about blackouts and the danger we ignored. I once had someone very, very angrily tell me in a discussion over alcohol and sexual assault that alcohol doesn't sexually assault people, men do. And while it's a fair point, okay, it's a fair point, but if alcohol makes it easier for people to cross that line, if it clouds judgment, if it lowers inhibitions, if it creates scary, scary situations where victims can't protect themselves, then how much blame does alcohol really escape? I just finished reading Dry by Augustine Burroughs, and it's a really good read. However, if you get triggered by watching alcohol-related content or sobriety content or reading it, you will get triggered by this, right? But if you're like me, don't get triggered by it. It's a really good book, and he's a really good writer, so check it out. And over the next few weeks, I'm going to be looking at the words and the phrases that I underlined in his book, and I'm going to be expanding upon some of them in this podcast, right? Burroughs writes, I was in a blackout at the time, so I was spared the memory. I was in a blackout at the time, so I was spared the memory. And he is referring in his book to a moment where he initiated phone sex with a stranger at 2 a.m. in the morning, right? And I want to talk about that a little bit. I want to talk about blackouts. So when I was younger, blackouts were a regular part of my life when I drank alcohol. And I can tell you from conversations and being around a community of people who drank alcohol, men and women, I was not alone, okay? This was part of the culture and none of us really saw it as a problem. I always say, the liquid lie is based on the premise that we believe that drinking alcohol is normal, nice, necessary, natural, and noble. And there's an aspect of blacking out when you're young, especially when you're in your teenage years or your 20s, where you think it's actually quite noble to black out. Like the fact that you don't remember anything is actually seen as some absurd joke, right? And this is why when you're younger, none of you see it as a problem. It is just par for the course. It is what it is. But looking back, that blind spot is absolutely terrifying, right? Because not only did I black out frequently when I was a teenager and in my 20s, but it was also the height of my sexual promiscuity and the height of everybody else around me sexual promiscuity as well, which means that we were all, men and women, right, having sex and sexual experiences while in various states blackout. And it's not until I became older, became a father of a daughter in particular, stopped drinking, that I started to question how damaging that was, right? Now, a couple of years ago, I went on a family holiday to Japan and Korea. And several nights in the evening, as we're walking through town, I'm with my daughter, she was like 6 or 7 at the time, I saw various young women, this is in Korea, stumbling around, quite obviously in states of blackout, going down subway steps. Oh my God, they're going to kill themselves. Lying on the floor, vomiting, being comforted by groups of men or women, And you're walking past and you have no idea if these people are their friends. You have no idea if these people are strangers. What are you supposed to do? There's so many of them. Like, do you intervene? What do you do? What happens next to these people? And it's not just Korea. Regularly, when I used to run early hours of the morning around Cardiff and I would go into the town centre, you would regularly and frequently see young women tottering home completely out of it, right? Or lying on the floor out of it. Men as well, men as well. But I particularly feel that this is more of a worrying thing for me when it comes to young women, right? You've got an entire city in terms of Seoul or Cardiff that is actually built around drinking, where young people blacking out in public is just common, right? It's expected. And nobody seems alarmed. It's just another night on the town, right? And we need to ask ourselves how many people end up in dangerous situations because alcohol has stripped them of their ability to react, to protect themselves, or even call out for help. Now, in the UK, there is a questionnaire that you fill in and it determines whether you have alcohol use disorder, AUD, right? One of these questions is this: during the past year, how often have you been unable to remember what happened the night before because you've been drinking? Like, and if you tick a lot, which I would have back then, and most of the people I was hanging around with were drinking would, it would say that you had alcohol use disorder. But it was just wasn't out of the norm. This is what I want to stress, right? This was just part of the culture. And I really believe that this is part of the liquid lie because we ignore how dangerous this is. The consequences of blacking out, of losing control, of being completely and utterly vulnerable, right, are brushed under the carpet. The fact of millions of people regularly drink themselves into a state where they have no memory of what happened the night before. This should be seen as an emergency, a real issue, a real problem, but instead, it's a bit of a joke. It's a badge of honor. It's just part of what a great night out we had. It must have been a great night out because I can't remember it. How many times have you heard people say that, right? And even if you try to raise the awareness or have a conversation around it, like I'm doing now, you often hit a brick wall. I'm half expecting this video to be blocked by social media platforms because I'm raising a flag that might be deemed too sensitive, trying to call out the harm. I will be labeled as being extreme, trying to kill the fun, a killjoy. You know, what do I know going on about this stuff? This is how deep the liquid lie runs, right? Deep stuff. I know it is. And it's really kind of like, ugh, it's icky. It's horrible because it's the dark side of humanity, but it exists and it's something we need to talk about. But for the moment, let's just take the weight off a little bit and have a little break. Okay. Welcome back. Today, as a father, my perspective has shifted completely, right? If my daughter, so I have a 24-year-old son, I have an 8-year-old daughter. If my daughter drinks at a party and blacks out, what happens next? Who is around her, right? Are they also blacked out? Or are they predators waiting for an opportunity, right? Alcohol is a factor in a huge percentage of sexual assaults. In England and in Wales, nearly 40% of rape cases involve an offender who has been drinking. But it's not just the perp. The victims of these assaults are also frequently intoxicated. And studies show that alcohol is involved in a significant portion of cases where victims are unable to consent or protect themselves. And this goes deeper than just sexual abuse, right? The amount of trips, slips, falls, fights, violence, the numbers of people who end up in the accident and emergency ward in the hospitals after a night out on a town is quite horrific, right? And this is what many people fail to acknowledge. The risk doesn't just come from others, it comes from us. Because when you're blocked out, you're not just vulnerable to external dangers, you're a danger to yourself. Because you have no idea what you're saying, you have no idea what you're agreeing to, and you have no idea of the situations you're walking into. So here's the truth that most people don't want to face, right? If you're drinking alcohol, you have to be hyper vigilant. You have to be. You have to be hyper vigilant about your environment. Like if you're at a house party, for example, I would say that the likelihood of something happening is exacerbated versus being in a pub. You have to be aware of who you're with. Are the people who are safe? Are the people who are not drinking? Are the people that you don't know? You have to be aware of how much you're consuming, which is really difficult because every time you drink alcohol, it calls you to drink more. Because the moment you stop paying attention, the moment you surrender control to alcohol, which when we drink alcohol, a lot of times it's out of our control because of the very fact of what the drug does. Alcohol will take over, and once it does, you may not know what is happening until it's too late. On to today's daily vow. Today, I won't drink because I refuse to let my past blackouts define my future, because I refuse to be blind to the risks, and because I don't want my sons or daughters to grow up knowing that losing control is never worth it. Final thought, blackouts, they're not normal. Although our culture believes that they are, they're not. They're not just part of drinking. It's not a sign that we had a good night. It's a sign of serious harm to our bodies, our minds, and our safety. Okay, a little bit deep, a little bit morose, but a very, very, very important lesson for you to consume, to get your head around, to talk about, to share, have discussions, all right? Please, if you like the 1000 Days Sober podcast, please subscribe and rate and review the show. Leave a comment or email me at thestrivemethod@gmail.com. And if you want to try Strive Method for free, our 6-month workshop to help you to become alcohol-free as fuck and live a self-led life, email me and ask for further instructions, because we're giving away the first week for free. And remember, do not drink today, because you don't need it and you are strong enough, courageous enough, and vulnerable enough, and brave enough to do without it. Much love and strive on.